John Blaxland is Director at the Strategic and Defence Studies Centre at the Australian National University. He joins me now from Canberra. Thanks very much for your time. Look, the other thing President Zelensky has said is that Russia is committing war crimes. And I understand there is an International Criminal Court prosecutor who's now launched an investigation. What do you think? Is it clear here whether war crimes have already been committed?
So if we take it that the UN principles apply and that you need a UN Security Council resolution to invade another country, and absent that resolution, you are in breach of international law, then I presume so. Now, I'm not an international lawyer, but I'm a historian, and I do know that the precedent here is significant. We've had 80 years or so of a system that, as flawed as it is, as bumpy and as problematic as it is, has relied on this principle. Even when the United States invaded Iraq in 2003, while it was subject to enormous criticism, valid as that was, they sought to cover their actions on the basis of a UN Security Council resolution dating back to the previous Gulf War that had not been rescinded. So you've got a country that has decided essentially to rewrite the rules to operate its way, and that way is at the end of the barrel of a gun. And it is setting an awful precedent that is dramatically affecting the dynamics across not only Europe, but the whole Eurasian landmass and beyond. We've got Germany's Olaf Scholz, who has, basically overturned Angela Merkel's rapprochement approach with Russia, taking a much more adversarial stance. We've seen Finland, we've seen Sweden saying that they're now siding with the West. We've got Switzerland even joining in now. The consensus is really quite compelling. What Vladimir Putin has done is outrageous. Needs to be checked. The question is, how do you check it?
Yeah, and John Blaxland, the way it's being checked at the moment is through sanctions, and we are seeing quite remarkable unity of the West in applying these, and they are clearly biting in Russia. Russia is also, it appears, not getting quite the run into Kyiv that they'd expected. That may change in the coming days. But what would be going on, do you think, around Putin right now amongst the oligarchs, the others close to the Russian president, who may be a little unsettled as to how the past week has gone? Not everything going perhaps the way they expected.
No, that's right. But Vladimir Putin is a one-man band. The oligarchs around him are relatively powerless. He makes pretty much all the decisions from all my understanding of the situation. And he's a man who's been prepared to use biological weapons in England. He's been prepared to use polonium against his own citizens, including Navalny, his opposition, political opposition. This is a man who has just threatened the use of nuclear weapons. This is a kind of a high watermark of extreme behaviour, the likes of which we haven't seen.
And how seriously do you take that, John?
Well, the problem is Vladimir Putin does tend to follow through on his threats. He threatened to attack in Georgia. He's done that. He's threatened to attack in eastern Ukraine. He did that. He's really. The problem is he's got a lot vested in this equation now. He's a bit like, a bit of a corner. He's put himself in a position where he doesn't have many other options other than escalation and seeing this through, other than having Zelensky back down, basically make some concessions about NATO and permanently neutralising Ukraine. So we've got a real conundrum here, because this is setting a terrible benchmark for what the future may hold. If Putin's actions go unchallenged, if he is successful, this has enormous ramifications for emboldening Russia to go further, particularly in the Baltics, perhaps also in Poland. There is, people say, "Oh, John, you're serious? Come on." Well, unfortunately, a week ago, we thought, come on, that was unreasonable. No one was going to invade Ukraine. The bottom line is power corrupts, and it certainly seems to be having a terrible effect on the mind of Vladimir Putin. And the question is now, how do we resist without actually triggering that reaction? How do we push back without actually getting him to be in
just quickly on that,
paranoid mind?
There's no easy answer to it, but what are your views on what that pushback should look like? Is it appropriate right now, or should there be some different approach? So
pushback is critical, but I think we need to hold the line that and it's not for Australia to make the call, but it's a NATO call not to use military force, a NATO military force inside Ukraine, because that is, I think, what would be something that would trigger in Putin's mind an escalation to which he would probably feel comfortable in using tactical nuclear weapons. That is a grave escalation. And there, if we go there, we're talking World War III. Nobody wants that. But what do we do short of that? How do we not cross that threshold? And this is where the aid, the sanctions, the coordinated actions, the SWIFT is, one thing I was advocating against a few days back that's happened now. If we're going to do this, it's got to be coordinated, it's got to be measured. And in addition, we need politicians to exercise restraint in their rhetoric, because words inflame. This is a very emotional moment.
Very difficult moment. John Blaxland from the ANU School of International Political and Strategic Studies. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, David.